In this video, I'm going to share with you my number one trick on how to overcome a particular difficult part of the song that you might be running into. And what I'm going to do is, if you watch until the end, I'm going to share with you a really powerful tool that will help you with overcoming these particular parts of the song. So here's the thing. This is something that my own teacher had taught me. And it's like an unofficial trick that you can use if you're working on a song and if you've gotten everything else down, but there's just one part that you just cannot, it doesn't matter how many times you practice it, you just cannot seem to get it down, or it just tends to be a little bit overwhelming to work on. There is a practice strategy that my teacher had taught me, and it's helped me get through any song or any piece of any difficulty level, whether it's a beginner piece or a more advanced piece. This will be very helpful for you. This method is called the isolation method. Now, what happens is what most people will do is when they're working on a particular song, when they're practicing, right? What they'll do, especially if they've gotten the rest of the song down, what they'll do is they'll practice the whole thing, and then they'll get to that one part where they're stumbling through, and then they'll just keep going to the next part. And what happens is they'll practice the entire song just to try to work on that one particular part. And what this does is it actually prolongs your practice time a lot longer than it needs to, because now you're over practicing the parts that you know really well, and most of your practice is going towards the part that you do know, and then not enough practice is going toward the part that you really need help with. So what we need to do first is we need to do what's called isolation. For those who don't know, to isolate something means to set something apart from everything else. So the way the isolation is applied here is, instead of practicing the entire song to work on just one part, you're going to focus on just that one part. So let's say if you have 15 minutes to practice a song or 20 minutes to practice a song, you don't want to spend 90% of that time practicing the entire song, only 10 minutes of that time or 10% of that time on the part that needs the help the most. You want to spend maybe 90% of that part on just working on that one particular part, and then the other 10% reviewing everything else that you already know. And that's one of the ways that you can really maximize your practice time. But that's just the beginning of it. So again, taking the majority of the practice time that you dedicated to work on that song and working on just that one part. And not just working on that one part, and I'll show you how to break that part down in a second. But what you also want to do is include maybe like a measure or so before the part and a measure or so after the part as you're working on it. Because then once you're reattaching that part to the rest of the song, it makes it very seamless. Before I get into what you need to do for that part as you're working on it, I do want to bring to your attention, I do have a free video, a free piano in 3 steps video that's great for complete beginners, starts you from the very beginning. If you want to learn piano, video is in the description box. So just sign up for that, and you'll also get a couple of other cool free tools that you'll receive in your email when you sign up for that free piano in 3 steps video. So now that you know that you have to work on this one particular part, depending on how difficult this part is, what I'm going to show you, you can break it down, whether you want to break it down by measure or if you want to break it down by hand. So for example, if it's a part that you can play together with both hands, but it just seems like there's a couple of notes that you just keep fumbling on, here's what you need to do. Take that part that we've isolated from the rest of the piece and bring it down to a super slow speed. Because here's what happens. If you're trying to rush through that part, you don't give your brain a chance to build muscle memory, because that's how most of us learn music, whether we realize it or not. Muscle memory is when we're doing something without thinking. So if we're walking somewhere, we're not thinking about walking, we're just walking, right? That's an example of muscle memory. That's how most of us learn music, is building muscle memory, but there's a process that our brain has to go through to get that skill to muscle memory. And the first thing we need to do is to slow that particular practice down, because then what we're able to do, as opposed to just rushing through and hoping that we get the right note, is when we slow it down, it gives our brain a chance to process each and every single note. And it also gives us time to think in advance what the next note's going to be, what the next chord is going to be, and it gives us a chance to prepare physically for whatever that next note will be. And then what you do is once you've gotten into a slow speed, even if it's embarrassingly slow, start slow and make sure that you start at a speed where you're able to get through that part without stopping or without fumbling through. Once you find that super slow speed, you want to run through that same part maybe 4 or 5 times at that speed. And that's where that muscle memory is going to develop, because then you'll start to feel yourself become more confident in what you're playing versus when you're just rushing through it and you're just like, oh, I hope I get the right note. Slow it down, bring it to a speed where you can play that part all the way through without stopping. And again, once you've gone through like the 3rd or 4th time, you'll start to feel like, oh, I can actually get this. And you'll find yourself correcting those mistakes. Once you've done that at that particular speed, slightly increase the speed. Again, don't try to rush through to the normal speed. Just slightly increase the speed and do the exact same thing where you go through it maybe 3 or 4 times. Once you've gotten comfortable with that, then you go to increase the speed a little bit more and then do the same exact thing and just keep doing this until you get up to that speed. And you'd be very surprised how well you'll be able to know that part. Even if you're going slow, it may seem like, oh, it's going to take me forever, but then you realize you actually got through that piece a lot quicker, even with you starting out slow. And so there was one more thing I was going to tell you about. Oh yeah, if you have to do this, if you're working on a part with both hands, and if you have to even use this same strategy for each separate hand first, the same thing applies. Start with a slow speed, run through that one hand a few times, increase the speed, do the same thing with the other hand, slow, and then just run through it again. And then when you do both hands together, bring it back to a slow speed, build that coordination up, and then build that speed. One of the tools that's going to be really helpful for you, I've mentioned this in one of my other videos, but what is going to really help you, this is the tool I told you I was going to talk about towards the end of the session here. That's going to be very helpful. If you do have an iPhone, there's an app, it's a free app called Pro Metronome. And what this is basically a tool that helps you keep timing. So when you're practicing at a slow speed, you want to make sure that you're not speeding up or that you're not kind of being off with the timing and rhythm. So what this is, it basically gives you a ticking tempo, tick, 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 right? So it helps you stay in tempo with what you're working on. So if you start at a slow speed, let's say that the speed that you start with is, let's say 60, right? You just type in, you tap in the number, you open this app and you press 60. And what it does is it sets the ticker at 60 beats per minute. And then you can just keep that on and just work on that part at that particular speed. Once you've done it a few times and once you're comfortable with it, then you can maybe add or go up to 70 beats per minute. You just type in 70 and press play. And you'll hear how it goes a little bit faster, but not drastically faster. And then just work on that same thing a few more times. And then you can just bring up the speed again. Tap this number and this little box will pop up. Type in 80 and you'll hear how it goes a little bit faster. So this metronome is going to be a really powerful tool to help you with using the isolation method for any particular difficult parts that you are working on. In my future video, if I had that video up already by the time you watch this video, it'll be in the end screen towards the right. I'm going to go over the top 3 tools that I use and that my students use to maximize their practice time. Again, it's designed to help you not only cut down your practice time, but you get a lot more done within that particular period of time that you're working on your music. So if this was helpful, please subscribe, turn on the notifications bar. I will be coming up with a bunch of other videos. Again, like, comment, subscribe, share. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to help you there. So thank you for watching. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.